It doesn't mean that we'll neglect human-to-human coordination because there are humans in that environment, but the shift towards human-AI collaboration, that muscle that you need to develop internally, will be actually more important and will determine how fast you can scale and how far.
Welcome back to the Thoughts on Selling podcast. Today, it is my absolute pleasure to have Amos Bar-Jospeh on with me, connecting in from Tel Aviv. Amos, welcome aboard. Here's the first question, Amos. Who is Amos Bar-Jospeh?
Oof, that's a big one. That's a big one, Lee. It differs from time to time, and I think I ask myself that a lot. Today, my answer to you would be that Amos Bar-Jospeh is an anti-capitalist capitalist.
Interesting.
Okay, what does that mean? Basically, I'm a third-time entrepreneur. It's not my first rodeo. I've built and scaled 2 startups in the B2B world, mainly in customer communication. And I did that based on the old growth at all costs unicorn playbook. You know, that playbook where you raise a lot of money before you know anything about product market fit, and you scale to 30, 40 people before you got to your first $1 million in revenue. And from round to round, you increase your vision and total addressable market rather than your real metrics. And I've realized after, building and scaling 2 companies that led to eventually exits, that playbook is not for me. And I don't really like it. And there's some fundamental flaws in it. And it hasn't been revamped or revised for like the last 15 years. And the only thing that has happened since the incarnation of the MVP, the lean startup by Eric Ries in 2009, is that it just became more and more expensive to build these companies. And the only thing that entrepreneurs got better at is fundraising. And I didn't like that direction. So when I started Swann.
Shit, Amos, I wish I was better at fundraising. We hobbled around a couple of times during that same get big fast period. And we raised a little bit of money, but not shit tons.
Yeah. And the only way to succeed in the startup environment was to just raise a shit ton of money. And if you didn't, you just lose.
As we did.
You did. I'm sorry to hear that, Lee.
There were multiple great experiences.
Yeah. So today, Swann, it's my third company. We've, launched it less than a year ago, and we're building completely different. It's actually an autonomous business. So it's not a business that is designed to scale with capital. It's a business that is designed to scale with intelligence. And what we're oriented towards is actually reinventing the playbook of how businesses scale today in an AI native world. But rather than telling a story of eliminating the human in the loop, our story is of human empowerment. Our journey is actually to discover the 100x version of each person on the team and using AI as an augmented force rather than a replacement force. And it's been a fascinating journey in the last 7-8 months. We scaled to over 200 customers, just the 3 founders and a bunch of AI agents. And I would love to chat about it, but I think that's a very long answer to who am I?
Thank you for that introduction, Amos. Let's take a half a step back. One of the reasons why we've connected for the Thoughts on Selling podcast is because you've got some very specific experience in customer success, customer satisfaction, sales, and engaging with customers. And we run the risk today of losing that personal touch. People buy from people, right? Autonomous agents buy from autonomous agents, right? But autonomous agents aren't going to buy new SaaS applications or ERP systems or whatever, right? It's still a group of people sitting around a table thinking, do we want to take the risk of taking on this new vendor, this new platform, or should we stick with business as usual? And I think, based on our initial conversations, I think you're helping to empower sales teams to be more successful in those conversations.
So the short answer is yes. The longer answer is that we believe that in go-to-market, it's a zero-sum game, and you're fighting over 2 things, basically. One is the attention of the buyer, which is finite. And second is the budget of the buyer, which is also finite. That's the 2 things mainly that you're fighting for. In contrast to software development, for example, if all the world will have access tomorrow to the best AI programmers, the best AI developers, then the entire world will enjoy an influx in software production and we'll be able to move faster, and that will increase GDP. That would be amazing. The funny thing about go-to-market is if the entire world would just use AI SDRs and have the, let's quote unquote, access to the best AI SDRs in the world, that won't move a needle. That won't change the GDP. That won't do a thing. And what we believe in is that the future in go-to-market belongs to the teams that will master human AI collaboration and will be able to just discover the 100x version of themselves by interacting with AI in various steps around their workflow. And it's not a question of automation versus augmentation. It could actually live side by side. And our thesis and what we're actually building in Swann as an autonomous business ourselves is we're trying to figure out what is the zone of genius of each person on the team. Once we identify that, how can we build a system of AI that automates the mundane, that it's outside of that zone of genius, and amplifies what's within that zone of genius?
I want to put a pin in that for just a second. I want to go back to a couple of things you said and start the argument.
Let's do it.
So number one, you said that sales is a zero-sum game. Why do you say that?
So attention and budget are finite. Okay, so you cannot create more attention. Attention is actually relatively defined by either the time that your buyers are spending on social media or looking at their emails or picking up their phone. And it's basically a zero-sum game in the sense that they are going to look at X amount of posts, they're going to scroll through X amount of emails, and they're going to answer X amount of phone calls, and you're just going to get into that X. And if you won't get into that X, no one will hear about you. Right. And what basically you are fighting against all the other people who are trying to get into that X number, basically, in terms of attention. Same thing goes with budget. So the buyer has a limited amount of budget, usually. It has some flexibility around, maybe you can push it a bit, etc. But it's not like you can double the size of the buyer's budget. And a lot of people want to get a piece of that budget, and you just want to make sure that you're one of these people that actually get a piece of that budget. And so because of that dynamic, what happens is that the only advantage that you can really take is rising above the noise and being different and being better than your competition, not just being better. So that's why I think it's a zero-sum game in the sense, not in the sense that it's carnivoric or something like that. It's more, or cannibalistic. It's a zero-sum game. It's just that you don't need to be better. You need to be different in that sense. And different is about creativity, and it's about human ingenuity. It's not about, just spending money on AI SDRs.
Yeah, so I'm with you through most of that. I'm not thinking that sales is like the Hunger Games, right? Where someone wins, someone dies. On the other hand, and I had a conversation with a coworker who was assigned to be the key account director on a large insurance company. And he said, "Hey, Lee, I didn't really want this job, but I got to take it, and I'm taking it, and my job is to fulfill demand." And I said, "John, that's bullshit. If your job was to fulfill demand, you'd be a fax machine. Your job is to go into that insurance company and show them different ways of doing things with our company's products and services that they didn't know was possible." I was at Oracle at the time. I was running field enablement for the Northeast. And it was his job to go talk with senior executives and show them different ways of running their business for greater success in the insurance game. I think that while attention may be largely limited, there is a little bit of elasticity. And beyond that, from a budget standpoint, personally, I hate finding budget. If someone says, "We already have a budget set," what that tells me is someone else set the budget. Someone else was the early advisor into that customer's thinking. I want to get into a space where people go, "We didn't know that was possible. It wasn't on our radar. We see the business opportunity. We're going to go find some money," right? And companies of any decent size always have some amount of slush money that they can spend. And then beyond that, if something has real impact, they'll find the budget for it. They'll find the money for it. They might take something from somewhere else, or they might just allocate some additional money. For the salespeople out there, I'd suggest don't get stuck on budget, right? And, BANT, budget, authority, N, I can't remember what N is, and time.
Need.
But need, yeah. Well, there you go. Budget, authority, need, and time. Like, if you're only sniffing around looking for budget, you're missing 75% of the opportunities to actually be creative. As my friend Gerhard Schwanter, who started Selling Power magazine, says, let's co-create stuff with customers. Let's create from scratch their ability to run their business differently. So, Amos, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So first of all, I definitely agree. And I think I would be talking to, sellers in my go-to-market organization right now, would never tell them that, the budget is a zero-sum game. I would definitely try to educate them about how they can influence the budget and increase it and just show why there's a new opportunity to generate a lot of ROI here and it's top priority, and why not just invest more resources there. I think from an AI perspective, when you look at the market as a whole, you look at the amount of resources that they can dedicate and the attention that they can dedicate, you realize that humans are critical in go-to-market to influence these decisions on attention and budget in that sense. And without it, it would just be a bidding machine that, if you, going back to your example of autonomous agents buying and selling to each other. So in a world like that, it's just, there's a finite amount of attention, there's a finite amount of resources, and the company who just bids the most will just, gets the more buyers.
And it's a race to the bottom. Whoever offers the most value for the least amount of money.
Exactly. And what's interestingly in go-to-market as well, that really builds on that point of view, is that there's a famous quote that says from David Sachs. He's a famous investor and go-to-market operator and built amazing companies. And he has like this law of distribution arbitrage. What does it mean, this complex sentence? It says that every go-to-market tactic, the more it gets adopted by the market, the weaker it gets, the less efficient it gets. Okay? It's interesting, right? And if you're looking mainly from a distribution point of view, from a marketing point of view, if you look at it and you're trying to generate demand, and you go back to your example, if that insurance customer account manager will tell the same thing as all his competitors, then that won't be really effective, right? And so to actually create that budget angle or to just capture that attention, you got to be creative and you got to be different than what everybody else is doing. And that is why humans will always play an important factor in go-to-market.
So let's delve into that a little bit more deeply. Different for its own benefit has no value. Different as it's relevant to how the customer perceives the world, right? Different based, and by the way, let me take that back just a bit. Most technology organizations today, and many non-technology organizations, sell on the basis of product. Here's our widget. Version 3.2 is better than 3.1. You should buy some. And customers, pardon my French, they just don't give a shit, right? The question the customer has is, one, why are you bothering me? And two, will this have any impact on my business? Will this have any impact on my ability to achieve my milestones, to get my MBO, to buy my jet ski, next quarter, right? Literally. And the widget conversation is just like it's Greek to them. So being different is useful when you talk the customer's language, when you're aware of what the customer is up to, when you can put your offer in the context of their world.
Yes, and I even think that in the next couple of years, this would just get more extreme. The reason why is that AI engineers and AI developers working alongside technology companies and non-technology companies as well are commoditizing software. And they're democratizing features and just enabling anyone to build anything almost. And the difference between different vendors and different sellers are going just to be the philosophy, the value, the transformation that they're looking to actually promote within their customer base. And the way that they will differ is just based on the outcome of that transformation. They maybe will have different features just because they believe in a different transformation that will yield a better outcome. And I think that feature language is going obsolete in the sense that buyers don't care about features. They didn't care, but now they even more so don't care because everyone can have every feature. It's not about that. It's actually how my organization look like tomorrow if your tool is being successfully implemented. And I think, that's language from to. and being able to depict that future in a very coherent and vital and vivid way is just the way that sellers should sell, connecting to ROI, but also to the emotions of the buyer as well.
Yeah, Amos, you mentioned something really interesting, that from and to perspective. Say more about that.
So I'll explain more about that through the lenses of our go-to-market strategy at Swann, actually. So at Swann, we're not taking the conventional route, as you've heard from the start, and because we believe that it's a zero-sum game when you look at strategies, etc. And if you go in the conventional route, you just need to invest a lot of resources to get very low outcomes. And so what we're going to market with is what we're calling a movement, basically. What does that mean to build a movement? Is that we worked very hard and are working constantly on shaping a narrative of that from to journey that our customers should go through. It's a societal change in how organizations work today in terms of human AI collaboration. And what we believe is that the future belongs to organizations that understand their talent stack, understand their buyers, understand their unique positioning, and can tailor that to an AI that understands that and work in tandem with it. And if you could fuse all of these elements together, your talent, your understanding of your buyers, your positioning, and your AI muscle combined together, then the transformation that you can go through is building a business that could scale with intelligence, not with headcount, by turning each person on the team into their 100x version of themselves. No feature described in that story, zero, right? And the reason why we're building a movement, it's because it compounds. What does it mean it compounds? With a regular go-to-market strategy, if you just, have an outbound campaign and then you run ads, these are two separate campaigns that don't really have any additive value, any compounding value. But when you're preaching for that transformation, even my competitor can actually share that message and I would win because that is our message and we actually advocate for that. And the moment that my buyer believes in that transformation, they want to work with me. And that's the powerful notion about movements, basically. And we've seen HubSpot doing it for inbound, for example. And then every company jumping on the inbound wave just made HubSpot stronger, right? And so what we're doing it is with autonomous businesses, telling our buyers that autonomous businesses is not about autonomous AI. It's actually about autonomous employees working with autonomous agents together to scale these employees with intelligence, not with headcount.
It's interesting, Amos. I just finished a book by Will Gardner. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. I'll sort it out. The book is Unreasonable Hospitality, and it's a book about Will's experience in the restaurant business in New York City. And the premise of the book is you have to give unbelievable service to stand out. And you can learn from your peers up and down the street of how they give stupendous service, and you can adopt pieces of that. And the most interesting part of the book is not all the things he talks about with regard to external services. It's the management of staff. It's how he trains his people to deliver exceptional service. And so, there's a saying, I forget what the saying is, but if it's not good for you, it's not good for anyone, right? To deliver outstanding service, you have to have an outstanding team. And to have an outstanding team, everyone's got to be, and I'm going to move to a second book now, everybody's got to be rowing in the same direction, which is from the book, Will It Make the Boat Go Faster by Ben Hunt Davis and Harriet Beveridge.
Lee, you should stop reading books with these complicated author names.
I'm going to go back to Green Eggs and Ham by Dr. Seuss.
That would be simpler, no doubt. But I can double down on what you said, which is super interesting. I think that the evolution, will it make the boat go faster? Like, can they row more synchronously? Team, the evolution of that is that we're transitioning from an orientation towards human-to-human coordination, which was kind of like the old school of scaling a business. So, okay, we have all these humans. How do we coordinate between them? So we need more managerial layers, more bureaucracies, more approval processes, more meetings, etc. To human AI collaboration. And it doesn't mean that we'll neglect human-to-human coordination because there are humans in that environment, but the shift towards human AI collaboration, that muscle that you need to develop internally, will be actually more important and will determine how fast you could scale and how far. And I think that that transition into actually thinking about human AI collaboration in your organization is a mind shift that every operator should go through right now.
Yeah, it sounds a little scary, Amos. And a year ago, I would have said, I'm not buying it. And today I spend 10 to 20 hours a week on ChatGPT. And I don't use ChatGPT as a research tool. I use ChatGPT as a pure collaborator, right? I will feed ChatGPT, like the transcript to this podcast. I'll feed ChatGPT the transcript and I'll get back a good draft of show notes and a LinkedIn post. And then it'll say, would you like me to also create a 500-word newsletter entry like we did for Ted McKenna from the Jolt Effect? And it's absolutely fascinating. And I've done other work that's fairly similar. I asked ChatGPT to create a 6-module workshop on the Inner Game Institute technologies. And it did a pretty darn good job. Right. And I didn't have to feed it anything. It went out and it figured out who Tim Calloway is and the inner game of golf and the inner game of business. And it created a pretty darn good workshop draft. So I'm all in on collaboration now. And that's at an individual level. It sounds like you've taken that to an organizational level.
Yes. So Bill Gates thought that the computer revolution, and he wrote a book about it, will actually bring this new notion of business at the speed of thought. And he thought that the computer will be the nervous system of an organization, but that failed, basically. And organizations moved faster due to computers, but they definitely didn't move at the speed of thought, right? Because eventually there was a lot of bureaucracies and managerial processes, etc. And the more you scale, the slower you got, basically. But with AI and actually with Swann, what we're building, there's an opportunity now to move a lot of these processes from solving it through bureaucratics to actually solving them with human AI collaboration. And I'm talking about human AI collaboration. It doesn't mean that it can be human AI to human collaboration in that sense, right? Could be two humans in that collaborative process with AI. You can take a simple process like an SDR working with an AE on an account list, and there's a lot of different coordination between the SDR and that AE. They want to, make sure that the SDR is working on the right accounts, that the SDR is surfacing, really qualified opportunities in that sense. And so there's a lot of backs and forth here. And you can solve it through a lot of bureaucracies and meetings and approval processes, or you can put AI in between that collaborative process so that the AE can teach the AI their decision-making process in that sense and just tell the AI, yeah, you know what, just surface me the accounts that you're not really sure about them, or just give me a summary of the reviewal process that you made for that SDR, etc. When what happens here, what we need to understand is not the AI replacing the AE. It's the AI taking the review process of that AE specifically, formalizing it and repeating it in a structural and scalable way, right? So it's actually a manifestation of what the AE thought of would be the ideal process. It's not the AI that is replacing the AE. It's the AI replacing the collaborative process between the SDR and the AE and just coordinating it better. And if you take that example and you scale it to your entire go-to-market organization and any collaborative process between your reps, your data, and your systems become operated by AI, then you have a different way to coordinate between everyone and you have a different way to scale, basically. And that leads me actually to the biggest revolution that is going to come in AI that hasn't come yet and that is currently overlooked, and it's memory. Okay, so people think that the better the model gets, then the closer we get to AGI, then it's going to replace me, etc. It's all about the model getting smarter. But the reality is, and if you believe in human AI collaboration, actually, rather than, AI replacement, then the reality is that AI will get better only if it just gets better at knowing you, knowing your business and knowing how you operate as an individual user. And we're at this weird scenario right now where still relatively, it's the same ChatGPT for everyone. Okay. And if you would go to ChatGPT and I would go to ChatGPT and we will ask it questions about, how do I generate AI SEO activities? It would just, will give us pretty much the same type of responses, maybe statistical differences, but not because it knows who we are. And what we're transitioning into is a world where AI has a memory, has a compounding understanding of how you operate. And at Swann, we're already implementing this and going back to this organizational example of how you could scale processes with AI. If it remembers and memorizes your business, how it operates, then you could start scaling it really with intelligence, not with headcount.
And I'm already seeing that in my personal use where ChatGPT will use my voice, right? It'll use the language I use. It'll use the kind of sentence structures that I use when it creates new content for me. So we're already seeing some of that. Amos, let's take a pivot. Let's make this real for the listeners. Take us through a day in the life of a Swann AI user, right? What was life before? What was the from? And what's the to?
Let's start with the most avid Swann user, which is me. Basically, I think that would be fascinating.
No, you're a super user. Let's take Joe Sixpack, average user.
So let's take an average user. Perfect. So basically, the biggest shift that the user will go through. So first of all, let's talk about like ICP, what the company, like try to kind of like paint the picture of like where they are in the world, et cetera. So we work mainly with startups from C to Series C, usually. We have some enterprises working with us, but it's mainly kind of like in an agile environment. It's kind of like a must-have to work with Swann. If you don't have that agile mindset, then it's very hard for you to change processes. And when you work with Swann, you go through a massive transformation and you need to have that ability to be flexible in your day-to-day. And if you're a seller, that type of startup in that sense, then what you used to doing is being very proactive, first of all, at your work. You need to think a lot like, which accounts should I go after? What should I do today? And to get data, actually, after you made these decisions, to get more data, it requires a lot of research, either through your existing tech stack, going through CRM, checking records, etc., or going online and researching on LinkedIn and Googling, etc. And the way that the transformation is happening for the seller is that they're becoming reactive to Swann, but not in a sense of black box AI reactive, in a sense that in an iterative process, the rep could influence how the AI collaborate with it, recommends it, which accounts to work for, how to act upon, which research to take, etc. It could influence that at any given moment of time and change, you know what, Swann? Yeah, so you surfaced an account, just visited our website. Amazing. So that's like high intent. I love that. And it's really in my territory. It's my ICP. You already did the research, but next time, verify if they have a CTO in the company. If they don't have a CTO in the company, then it means that it's really low intent and I don't want to work with these types of companies. So in Slack, by the way, the conversation happens. Swann reaches out to that rep in Slack, gives it the recommendation. The rep could actually reply back and say, yeah, for next time, only if they have CTO. Swann will adapt its own workflow accordingly. And now next time we'll review if there's a CTO in the company. And if not, won't direct that alert to that rep.
So there's a heuristic model that you've built in place.
There's a feedback loop. So the AI is designed for feedback loop. And 99.9% of AI startups today and AI companies don't have a mechanism for feedback loops. And that is the number one reason for why these transformations fail. Because these transformations are optimized for perfection, not for adaptation. And what does that mean is that there's a seller who convinced the buyer that this is going to be a massive transformation, and that is how their entire workforce should work. Tomorrow, the AI is in place now, and now there's a lot of different nuances in, these workflows, these intricacies that you have to solve for, and there isn't any mechanism for it. And what happens, these feedback loops, Lee, they are the foundational stone for human AI collaboration. Because in that iterative process, what happens is that Swann wears the shape of your workflow, of your habits, of your unique advantages. And what starts to happen is that you focus more and more on your zone of genius. Swann automates what's outside of it and amplifies what's within it, it can only happen in a collaborative, iterative process. And that's a transformation that sellers and marketeers could experience with Swann, is to imagine a scenario, to imagine a workflow that could be very powerful, transformative for them, build it with Swann, but then most importantly, iterate on it until it wears the shape of how they really want to operate with it.
Yeah, I really like that. I think your point is spot on, that the demo doesn't fit the reality and then the reality doesn't change, right? We'd like to change these features. Oh, well, that's going to take $300,000 in professional services. No. And welcome to the Gartner trough of despair, right? And so what the model that you've described is an adaptive environment on the part of the AI, that the AI is adapting to the user's needs and the feedback of what's working and what's not working.
Exactly. And there's actually more to that because it's more nuanced to that. And the reason why, it's because this is the new software paradigm. And I'll explain what does that mean, basically. Are you familiar with Lovable, Lee? Did you hear about them?
What's Lovable?
So Lovable is kind of like an AI developer that can, you describe your apps and it just builds it. And we talked about the commoditization of software, right? So you have all these AI engineers, and what happens over time is that it's getting really easy to build software. And a lot of people are getting confused and think that it's going to be the end of these big software companies because there's just going to be thousands and thousands of software solutions, et cetera. But that's not where the new software paradigm is heading towards. What we're heading towards is a world where every software can generate software on demand for you on the spot. What does that mean? It means that it can wear the shape of how you operate on demand and can constantly adapt to it. What it requires is not just a prompting interface to tell the AI that you want to work differently. The entire architecture should be built that it could be adapted based on the user feedback or any other data points that should adapt it. And that is the new software paradigm, is an architecture, software architecture that is really adaptive to your feedback and to the way that you work with it. And we're representing that first wave of companies that are really built for that change in terms of every business and every user on the planet will have their own version of the software that they work with because that version is tailored to them specifically, constantly, and it's retailoring itself every fucking day. You told me that I can swear, so I just had to put one swear in this conversation. Sorry.
What'd you say? Every fucking day? That's awesome. So Amos, I'm going to summarize the history of software up until this conversation. You ready?
Let's go.
3 words: record and report. Tell me I'm wrong. Record and report. And I work for Oracle, the company that popularized the relational database. Maybe Larry actually invented it too. And it's record and report. And now what you've described is a very different paradigm.
It's a paradigm where an iterative process, you can influence how software works around you specifically. You can constantly modify it and make sure that the AI is automating what's outside of your zone of genius and amplifying what's within. And even if you don't know what your zone of genius is, you can discover it through that iterative process because you can understand that, I don't like researching that lead and the AI does a pretty good work on it. So let's just let the AI research it completely. Or you could be a different seller. I'm super analytical. I can go through these K-12s. I just need an AI that will surface me the summaries, et cetera. And I will go through these summaries and take these insights myself because I can do a better job at the AI at researching that account. I just need the AI to just give me all the sources and summarize it, et cetera. It's a different process for a different human being.
So the reports of the salesperson's demise are greatly exaggerated, right? We talk about software replacing salespeople. Well, guess what? 40 years ago, with, I forget what the technology is, the simple, not barcodes, but the automated specs of just sharing data back and forth. I can specify, 1 carton of toilet paper or 1 pallet of dry goods. And, when I describe it, the system knows exactly what I'm talking about. I can transmit that to any vendor and get a response back. So the commoditization continues. That hasn't changed, but that's nothing new. Also, what's not new is salespeople that have a clue, that understand what customers need and how to talk to customers and how to be authentic and curious. There's still room for them, and perhaps their ability is being supercharged now.
Yeah, and I think the fundamentals didn't change. The fact that productivity software tries to tell you that we're going to eliminate the sellers, but they don't eliminate the sellers eventually, that happens a lot. And a lot of people are trying to kill the SDR or the AE, etc. But the truth is that it doesn't matter the name of the role. The truth is that humans play a vital role in go-to-market, either in marketing and sales. And the only thing that is changing is that over the last 25 years, since Oracle came in with Salesforce, later with CRM, then we had sales automation like sales and outreach, etc. All these companies promised less system interactions and more buyer interactions.
Liars,
right?
liars.
They promised that.
Liars.
Liars. Exactly.
More reporting into the system. Poor salesperson sitting there typing stuff into Salesforce at 8 o'clock at night, wondering what's in it for me. And CRM is not a tribal knowledge system. It's a reporting system. It's a reporting and management system.
Yes, exactly. And so that's what happened over the last 25 years. But what we believe in Swann, that the future of AI is not killing the seller, is reducing the system interactions finally to zero. It's not another system. It's not another system of record. It's actually an intermediate layer between humans and their software that could finally help them decide which processes they want to take on their own and which processes they want to completely automate by the AI. And so we're actually entering into an era where system interactions would be reduced to zero and buyer interactions will be what you will spend on most of your time, either interacting with buyers or strategizing on how you would interact with buyers.
Amos, I love the fact that you're focusing on this on multiple levels. One is building the business, and the other is really evangelizing this new approach that's at a meta level of this is how the world's going to be different. That's very cool.
That's part of building a movement, is trying to awake that transformation in the market, but also live it for yourself and lead the charge towards it and build the product that could support it.
That's very cool. Amos, where can people find you?
So on LinkedIn, first of all. So I love posting on LinkedIn. I have more than 30,000 followers and counting, and that's where I share a lot of my thoughts on the autonomous business revolution. On top of that, I have a newsletter. It's called The Big Shift, and you can find it online, or we can share maybe in the footnotes or something, the link. And it's where I document our journey on becoming an autonomous business, the wins and losses. So if you want a front row seat, you can subscribe. And finally, if you have any questions to me, I have a digital clone in ChatGPT that you can ask questions. It's almost as good as me, but it's not as good as, but it will be interesting for you to play with. It's called Autonomous.
Very cool. Where can people find that?
So it's in ChatGPT in the GPT store. So it's called Autonomous, and just search for it and you can find it.
Amos, this has been great. I very much appreciate your time and your insights.
Thank you very much for having me, Lee.
Yep. Thanks, Amos. Another deep dive into the topic of sales excellence and the performance mindset. If you found this conversation interesting, I would appreciate it if you would share the podcast with a coworker or two. And to explore this topic in more depth, send me a note via the contact form on podcast.thoughtsonselling.com or find some time for us to talk at meet.acellergroup.com. Thanks.